Hey scrollers, welcome to Scroll Saw Forum's review of the Excalibur 21 scroll saw. I'm Bob Bloodworth, and just a little bit about me real quick. I've been scrolling for about 3 years. I bought the Excalibur EX21 a year ago, and didn't want to do a review of it back then because I hadn't used it that much. Now I've got a year under my belt with it. I think now's a good time to go ahead and do a review. So anyway, let's get to the saw, and hopefully you'll enjoy the review. We're going to start off with the stand, which is what most people do. The stand is pretty basic, it's simple, it's easy to put together. As you can see, I'm using it as a shelf on the bottom. I've got some extra wood storage there, which accomplishes two things. It also helps eliminate some of the little extra vibration that there is. And I also, as you can see, have a foot switch, which if you have one of these saws and you don't have a foot switch, you really just need to go out and get one. Back to the stand. The stand is simple to put together. If you have a basic set of tools and a little bit of common sense and knowledge on how to use a wrench, you shouldn't have too many problems using the diagram that's supplied with the instructions. Now we're going to go over some of the key features of this saw. One of the really nice features about this saw that a lot of the other saws don't do is the arm lifts up in order to enable blade changing. So we simply release the tension lever, loosen the blade up, pick it up, and there you have it. Now you can easily come under here, unscrew the bottom blade holder, change your blade, which I'm not going to do at this point. Set it back down, give it just a little bit of a snug. You don't have to bear down on that, and now you've got a tight blade. On most saws, the front to back paralleling of the blade is pretty much next to impossible to get. It's whatever it is when you buy the saw. Fortunately, on this saw, the Excalibur EX21, all we have to do is come back to the motor, which is back here. This is the motor, and loosen up. You can't see the one, but there's 3 of these little Allen head screws. You just loosen them up, and then you can turn the motor whichever way you need to correct the front to back blade adjustment. You typically only have to do it once. Once it's set, you should be good to go. That's something that you would do normally on initial startup of the machine. The electrical components of this machine are all very basic, very simple, and work very well. As you can see here, we have our power switch, our on-off switch, which is nicely covered by a little rubber cover to prevent dust from getting into the switch. We have our variable speed motor controller right here, and it slows down and speeds up the motor and works very well. It easily plugs into a 115 volt outlet on pretty much any house for the American users. And of course, I showed you before the foot pedal, which does not come with the saw. It is optional. I would highly recommend spending the extra 25 or 30 bucks to go ahead and pick it up, because it's well worth it. Once you use the foot pedal, you will never go back to not using it. And that leads us to the blower, which works very well. It's very basic, very simple. I've had this saw for a year now, and I have not had any problems with it whatsoever, except for 2 little minor problems, which, you know, I can live with. As you can see, I do a lot of top feeding on my projects, which means I feed the blade through the top, and sometimes you simply can't see the hole. So when you're trying to get the blade through the hole, you can tend to scratch the top of the table up. I wish it didn't scratch quite so easily, but it has no effect on cutting whatsoever, so you know, I can deal with it. The other little item is sometimes if you feel strong one day or you drink too much coffee, you might tighten the thumb screws up a little bit too hard on the blade. If you do that, they're very difficult to get off. You really got to put some strength behind it or use something else. There are options out there that I'm sure you'll be able to find for replacing the thumb screws. The thumb screws I'm using are still the original ones from the factory. I've had no need to actually change them. I guess I've got a pretty strong thumb. One of the things that impresses me most about this saw, actually it's two things. It's how quiet the saw is and how little vibration it actually does have. I'll show you by balancing a nickel there and step on the pedal. And as you can see, it's very quiet. I didn't have to raise my voice at all, and the nickel is sitting there and hasn't hardly moved. So that's pretty good proof right there that this is a well-built quality saw, due to the fact it's not noisy and there's extremely little vibration in it. And if you do have any vibration in yours, like I said, just put a little bit of weight on the stand and that'll help take it out right away. Under the table is where some of the guts are that make this saw pretty fun. As you can see here, this is the tilting knob for the tilt head, which makes this saw extremely different than most of the other saws out there. Instead of the table moving, the head tilts, and I find this option to be so much easier than the table tilting, because now you're holding your piece on a flat surface and the blade is tilted, as opposed to trying to hold your piece on a crooked table, and it can be a nightmare sometimes. The tilting head eliminates that problem completely and makes it a real pleasure to have to do angle cuts, and it's really simple to operate. You just loosen up this little knob on the front and then you turn it to whatever degrees you want and the head moves right with you. So let's say we want 20 degrees, you just come down here, look at the scale, put it on 20 degrees, tighten your knob up, and you're good to go. And it's pretty darn accurate too. If for some reason it's not accurate out of the box, it is adjustable to where you can make it accurate just by loosening these 4 screws up here and tilting that plate, which I did not have to do because it was dead zero when I took it out of the box and started using it. Right here you'll also see the bottom blade nub, which when you do top feeding on your projects, you find that really quickly with your hands after you do it a few times, and it becomes second nature to reach under there and loosen that knob up, pull the blade out, and drop the blade in from the top of the wood. When it comes time to putting your table back into the vertical position or 90-degree position, perpendicular, whatever you want to call it, it's really not hard. You loosen the screw back up on the bottom and turn your big knob, take it back to 0, and at that point you're pretty much ready to go as it is. But I like to make sure that my blade is perfectly perpendicular to the table. So when I originally set my saw up, I made the blade perfectly perpendicular, and then I cut a little notch into a block like this. I call it my blade setup block. And now all I have to do is bring the block with the slit already in there and adjust this until it just slides right in, and boom, there you go. Now and tighten up the locking nut on below the table. Now I know my blade is perfectly 90 degrees to the table or perpendicular. Overall, this is a very well built saw, which is important to me because my trade is I'm a mechanic basically. So quality of the build is important. This saw, as I've said before, I've had over a year now. I have not had any problems with it, have not had to replace anything. It performs well and it's as quiet today as it was on the first day I started it, which is very important to me because I don't want to sit behind a machine that I have to wear earmuffs on all day long. Yes, at $800, which is the price range I bought it at, it's a little bit pricey, but to me it's well worth the extra couple $300 to get the better saw that you know is going to last for a long time. And you really cannot beat the tilt head and the arm lifting up. Those are features that just make your sawing so much easier in the long run. You know, you don't want to have to sit down to your saw and be frustrated because it's hard to do something. There's nothing hard to do on this saw. Changing the blades easy, tilting the blades easy, picking the arm up easy. The blower works great. I mean, the saw's got everything you really need. It has made me much more efficient at cutting the projects that I do. They simply do not take as much time to complete as it did on my old saw, because all the conveniences are there to make it easy to get the job done. Well, thanks for watching the video. I hope you got something out of it, learned a little bit. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at bob.uwt.com. And also, please visit my website at scrollsawforum.com. And I've got some pretty cool little things over there you might want to check out. So hopefully, if you buy this saw, you'll enjoy it as much as I do. And I wish you all the luck in the world with it. Down, buddy. You guarding my saw?